What's up, guys? I'm back here with my special guest and friend, Gabriel. We're recapping the Bears' victory from yesterday and just talking about the Chicago Bears season in general and the future of this team. Greg, how's it going, man? Honor to have you back again.
Doing good, doing good. Nice little win in a shortened game. I'm surprised just watching the game they just didn't call it right away because you saw the radar. They had pictures of the radar. It was going to have thunderstorms for a while. They let them wait for a half hour and draw it out for a half hour. But in situations like that, and I've been to some games and seen some games on TV where they just call the game. Game doesn't count as preseason. They got in basically three quarters. They got, it was all backup guys. So guys you wanted to get reps for, call today, go home, and instead of sitting around waiting for an extra half hour.
Yeah, I didn't see any reason for the half hour wait, especially when you saw the radar. The radar was a massive storm coming in. So it's like if you're stopping it before it even gets to you, then you're not going to recap that. I was a little bit disappointed because some of the guys that I was excited to see get more reps had just started getting into the game late in the third quarter, like Austin Reed at quarterback. Keith Randolph Jr. was coming in the game more regularly.
Well, he had played. Randolph did play a lot though the first half.
Yeah,
they were playing. They were playing a 4-man rotation with the defensive tackles. I mean, going back to the very first drive, which was, that was like a 13, 14 play drive that Houston had. And it's because he got a bunch of reps. I'll tell you what was interesting, though, and I didn't notice it until I rewatched some of it this morning. Last year, they were strictly 3 technique, 1 technique. This year, at least for this game, who knows if it's going to carry over into the regular season, they played left tackle and right tackle. And so depending on the alignment of the offense, the left tackle, like in Randolph's case, he was the left tackle. He could be a 3-on-1 play and a 1 on another play.
Yep.
And that's the same with the other guys.
And for people not familiar, basically what you're saying is kind of like I broke it down earlier what Eberflus is doing with the safeties as well. He wants them to be interchangeable. So offenses can't tell which guy's the free safety, which guy's the strong safety. They could both play either role. Eberflus also wants to do that at defensive tackle with his 3 technique and his nose tackle, which is what you're basically saying there. And I talked
but has he publicly said that, though?
Yeah, he has. I remember him talking.
Okay, I did not hear because I noticed it watching the game. I go, oh, okay, these guys aren't playing specifically 1 and 3. But I knew the safeties were going to go back and forth. I had no idea that he said that they were going to do the same thing with the DTs.
It's something he's wanted to do. He mentioned it last year. It was in a press conference when they were talking about Zach Pickens and Gervon Dexter and how the media guy basically said to them, you're playing him out of position because Gervon Dexter is a nose and you're playing him at 3 tech and Zach Pickens at 3 tech and you're playing him at nose. And Eberflus said ideally he wanted those guys to learn both positions so he could use them interchangeably. Now, he was talking about Pickens and Dexter, but I took it as more that's what he wants to do with his defensive tackles overall. And last night looked like the first time we're really seeing that's something they could be maybe doing this year a little bit.
It still remains to be seen. Now, going back to last year, when you look at Pickens is a natural 3. When you look at his size, athleticism, etc. But they didn't have a backup for the nose. And so to get him on the field, they put him at that position. I originally thought when they drafted him that Gervon Dexter was going to be the nose and Pickens was going to be the 3, and it was the other way around. And now, this year we're finding out why. I mean, once Gervon Dexter learned how to play the 3, because he played in the 2-gap defense at Florida, totally different scheme. It was like he had to relearn how to play the game. And then he got himself in real good shape. I think now you're seeing a guy who is a natural for that 3 technique position. Looking at Pickens last night, in all honesty, a little disappointed. I thought he would play a little bit more assertive. Randolph, I thought, was okay. Played real hard, got some penetration, was disruptive a little bit. I'd have to go through the tape 3 or 4 times to really watch it closely and see who did what. But on the whole, not too bad. I thought he was better than Cowart, who is his competition for that fourth spot. The guy who impressed me, and he didn't play a lot, was Austin Booker. Explosive. Yeah. He's not big. I mean, I don't know what he weighs now. He played at between 245 and 250 at Kansas. He was 243 at the combine. What was interesting is at the pro day 3 or 4 weeks later, he was 252, but I think he's less than 250 right now, probably in that 248 range, but he doesn't play small. And he gets into people. He uses his length, and he's got snap in his hips. I mean, he drove the Texans left tackle Blake Fisher, who played at Notre Dame last year, put him on his ass one play. And Fisher's like a 320-pound dude, and he was their second-round pick, and he's a pretty strong guy. He's got, for a guy that's long and lanky like he is, he's got some power. And I thought his hand use for a rookie who really only played 1 year of college football as far as getting reps, I thought his hand use was really good. He keeps guys, his arms extended. He never lets people get into his body. He doesn't get locked down by an offensive lineman. He had a sack. I don't know if he was officially awarded the sack, but if he didn't get it, he was right there. But all told, I think he's pretty good. And I'm just hoping that he grows every game, because he's got talent. Whether we're going to see it all this year, that remains to be seen. But I liked what I saw. Put it this way, it was a lot more or better than I expected.
Yeah, I agree with that. Technically, I mean, he did get to the quarterback. He beat the offensive tackle on an outside-inside move, but it looked like I watched it this morning, the condensed game, quite a few times. It looked like Byron Cowart punched the ball out right before he got there. So he was awarded the strip sack. But technically, yeah, Austin Booker he got there, hit the quarterback, took him to the ground. Big move on his part.
Yeah, no, he first of all, he's a quick study, and he's got good football characters. I think he's going to end up being a little bit of a surprise. Personally, I had a 3rd round grade on. So, and if you look at how the draft went, you get from like the middle of the 3rd round to where they traded up to get him in the 5th. There's only like 2 or 3 edges went. Very few, and then they all started coming after he went. They all the guys I liked. There was Jackson from Washington State, Kamara from Colorado State. All those guys started coming off the board then, and I don't know why they lasted as long as they did. Most of them were undersized guys, and that probably had a lot to do with it. But all good football players.
For me, Booker, you could definitely see the talent. You could see the length. You could see his athleticism. You could see the burst off the line. And like you, I was surprised with his power. Like he put the offensive tackles back, knocked them back quite a few times with his bull rush.
Yeah.
And that's something that
we did it. Did you see the Texas game from last year, that tape?
Yes.
Texas got a pretty good tackle in this year's draft. One of the better tackles in this year's draft.
Yep. I think he's only a sophomore.
He knocked the shit out of him a few times last year. I think his name is Banks, if I'm not mistaken. But he played really well against that guy last year in the Texas game. So there's something to him. And, they gave up a 4th next year to get him, which means they liked him. You're not going to make a trade like that unless you really got a conviction on a player.
Yeah, 100%. They like him, and I love his upside. I did note, I think he's still raw in some areas. I saw when they ran that reverse right at him, he wasn't setting the edge properly like Eberflus
right.
would like. But
that was one of the first plays he was in.
I do see the upside there. I see a lot. I didn't even see him. I'm going to have to rewatch, but I didn't even see him do his spin move, which is one of his most impressive moves. And he has like a little.
No, I didn't see it at all either.
He has one of those little cross chop kind of moves as well, and I didn't see anything like that. So he has some tools in his pass rush bag that I didn't even see, but he still shows that athleticism and the power that I'm intrigued. I think he can get on the field early this year, but as a situational pass rusher, a guy that's going to come in on 3rd and long and in obvious passing situations. He's not going to be a guy out there on 1st and 2nd down most of the time.
Well, that I might disagree, only because of the way they play the rotation.
Yeah,
they want to play a 4-man rotation. I agree that predominantly he'd be in there for pass rush type plays, but I think he is going to get some first and second down play also. And, it may be more towards the middle of the year and end of the year than early in the year. That remains to be seen. But as he gets better and as he learns, he'll earn more play time. Now, conversely, on the other side, the guy that did nothing for me and has to do something is Dominique Robinson. Did nothing.
Yeah, I didn't see anything from him, man. And he's a guy who he's in the make or break year. He's a guy who this is his third year now. He's had 2 years in the strength and conditioning program to bulk up. And this is his third year in the same defense with Eberflus. So he's a guy who really has to show something. And I don't see him. I don't see him jumping off the line of scrimmage. I don't see him showcasing the kind of burst or power that Austin Booker showcased in his first preseason game already. So to me, yeah, I think Dominique Robinson's a guy who I was looking to see something from last night, but honestly, I think Daniel Hardy and Khalid Kareem outplayed him. And
Hardy had some plays where his quickness jumped out and the way he comes off the ball. And to me, Robinson looked like he was just treading water. That part was disappointing.
It was tough to see, yeah. And then you mentioned Zach Pickens being one of your disappointments as well. I was initially really disappointed with him. I did see some better reps when I was rewatching the tape this morning. Obviously, it's just the broadcast. I watched the condensed game. You watch the whole game in like 30 minutes, but it's not the all 22. But I did see Pickens with some good reps and 2 run stops where he shed the tackle and was able to bring the runner down. But there was a play where he got washed out and the runner went right behind him. He didn't even know where the guy was. So it was an up and down performance from Zach Pickens and nothing really flashed out there. So I want to see more from him going forward. But I'm still remembering, and I think you'll have more to this. It's still really early with only a week of training camp, 2 padded practices. Like these guys aren't in peak conditioning or performance yet. Plus, the field looked pretty sloppy last night, and it was raining. Do you think that played any part in any of this?
Well, the rain didn't start until the second half. That field is not known as the best field to play on. So that is what it is. All told, and I posted this on X right at the end of the first half, I thought for a first preseason game, the first half was extremely well played by both teams. Very few mistakes. Usually, the flags fly on every other play. To me, they're the hardest games to watch because they're so freaking boring. And what I liked is not only was there crisp play, let's just talk about the offense as a whole. The play calling in a first preseason game better than we've seen the last 2 years in any game. This was a vanilla game.
That Shane Waldron effect, I thought he really dialed it up. I thought we could really see it on that 2-minute drive. The Texans went down the field and scored. They, at that point, I think had a 10-point lead on us. We got the ball back with just under 2 minutes left to go. And this is
I looked at it, 146, and they scored with 36. So they did that in the minute 10.
Yeah, and I think that's after taking time off for the kickoff and everything, too. I think, according to ESPN, it said it was like a 7-play, 73-yard drive that we did in 53 seconds. So that's something that I haven't seen from a Bears offense. I don't know if I can remember the last time I've seen that, but even in preseason, I don't see that. Usually, I think Getsy would have came out there and called 2 runs and maybe a screen pass. Like, they dialed it up. They threw it downfield. He was attacking all 3 levels of the field. We saw a play action in there. I loved what I saw from Waldron in that.
No question about it. And then, obviously, you got to bring up Johnson, the receiver. Now, I'm going to go back to last year. I don't remember what he did. I don't even remember if he was here in the preseason. He might have been picked up after the cut to 53. He was on the practice squad, and he was brought up, I think, for the final 2 games. Made a couple plays in the past game, but he jumped out on special teams. And then last night, opening kickoff, he makes the tackle, has the 2 big leaping catches, has the touchdown, and the 1 catch they overturned. But, he doesn't time fast. He timed 4.6. He plays faster than that. And he's a 6'6" guy. But, if you're going to be a 5th or 6th receiver, you have to be able to play special teams. And he has proven now in regular season games last year and then yesterday that he can do that. So, in my opinion, he's a viable guy to be on the roster. What happens, and I'm going to write about this as we get closer to the cut down. And what fans don't understand is when you're putting your roster together, when you get to the bottom of each position group, let's take receivers. Your fifth and sixth receiver might not be your fifth best wide receiver and your sixth best wide receiver. Might be 7 and 8, because 7 and 8 are better special teams players.
I've been trying to tell people this,
yeah. And that's what it's all about. It's how do they? Because if you can't play on specials and contribute, you're a wasted roster spot. First 4 don't have to. The other 2 have to be able to.
Yep. So that's when I'm looking at this. When I'm looking at the wide receiver room, and that's why I started thinking about it more last night after Colin Johnson's big game, because I love his upside and he can play special teams. The problem is he's not a punt returner. And when I'm looking at our wide receiver room, clearly we have 4 locks. The big 3 are easy locks. Tyler Scott, I don't think is going anywhere. And then I think even according to last night, it looks like Velus Jones is pretty safe to make this roster. I think they view him as
he didn't even play.
Yeah, they view him as the starting kick returner, I think. And considering we play the Texans in week 2, I think they didn't want to show him anything.
But here's the only thing, though, Swifty, is when I look at money sometimes. And that Carter, when they signed him a few weeks ago, they guaranteed like $1.5 million.
That's what I was getting to. I mean, if you look at the first 4, and then you got Velus as 5, and I think DeAndre Carter's our starting punt returner. That's 6 receivers pretty much locked up on this team. And I think unless we keep 7, do you think there's a chance we can keep a 7th receiver? If it's a guy like Colin Johnson who can play,
there is a chance. Okay. I mean, it's been done. You got to have some cover guys,
but that'll come down.
They can't just be returners. They got to be cover guys.
Beating out another position, it's going to be like a special teams job. So, like if Colin Johnson makes the roster, that's going to come at the expense of a guy like Travis Homer or a 4th running back. So if we keep 7 receivers, it's numbers. There's going to be 1 less at another position. So I think it's going to be tough for Colin to make the roster.
That's true.
Someone else gets hurt.
Well, Barbara, I mean, this is 1 game.
Yeah.
But now he's got to repeat that. Now, he might not get the targets in the next 2 games like he got. But he's got to, and it's not just the games, it's practice. In fact, they probably put more into practice than they do in these games, because you don't know exactly how the games are going to play out, what the weather's going to be like, etc. Like a game, you can go in and say, okay, I want to give X amount of reps to certain players, but then you come out and Houston gets the kick of like a 7-minute drive on the opening drive, and that can change Tuition plan only because they have the ball so damn long. So you've got to readjust during a game, and that's why they go back to practice being so important. And then when you get into Cincinnati week, they're having that joint practice. I think, depending on how they're going to use the vets in the game, that'll determine how the vets are used. And there's only 1 joint practice, and that's 2 days before the game, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So like the day before the game is walkthroughs and stuff. So if they're not planning on using the vets a lot, they're going to get the predominant amount of reps in the joint practice, or vice versa. Could be the other way around.
And they used that last year. Justin Fields got a lot of reps all week when we had the joint practices in Indy against the Colts. And then they decided to set him out in the game. And the Colts did the same thing with Anthony Richardson and their starters. And they both cited the preseason reps and the joint practices as reasons why. Now, we don't have a whole week, so I do expect Caleb to play some in that game. But we are still having that joint practice. And I think they will count that basically as a preseason game or as more reps for Caleb Williams.
With Indy last year, they had 2 practices, and this is only 1.
Yeah.
So you're going to treat it a little bit differently, but because it's 2 days before the game, that's why I came up with this. Especially when you get into team periods. When you get into team periods, if it's predominantly starters, you're not going to see a lot of starters, or they're not going to play more than say a series or two in the game.
I had another point I wanted to make about the defense here. I don't think this was a big deal at all because it was just preseason. But I did notice Eric Washington had the play sheet last night. It looked like he was calling plays on defense.
Yeah, that was announced early. That was a lot of
Was it?
months
Okay.
ago that he was.
Okay.
Yeah, that he was going to do the play calling in the preseason. And,
Okay,
and then
just in the
Flus was going to do it
season.
in the regular season.
But he's going to be part of game planning. Okay, I thought it was interesting, but also, I mean, play calling in preseason, especially on defense, it looked pretty vanilla last night. I still saw defensive linemen dropping into coverage more than I like, but other than that, it was just pretty vanilla defense.
No, there's a couple times that happened, and then the other thing that we never saw in previous years, they had a couple corner blitzes.
Yeah, I saw a couple corner blitzes. Well, I've seen Kyler blitz a lot,
right? But this, I mean, in the preseason, you almost never see it.
Yeah.
So they showed it in the preseason, and that's just, I think, just to throw it out there.
Mm-hmm. And it's something I think, I don't know if it's Eric Washington effect as well, or just I've noticed it in camp even. And it's something I haven't seen in camp, especially with our last two rookie quarterbacks with Justin Fields and Mitch Trubisky during their rookie seasons. I didn't see our defenses blitzing or doing anything exotic, especially in the first week of camp. Whereas that's what they're doing to Caleb Williams. I don't know if that's.
I think you got to. I think that's the way to prepare him. You got to throw everything at him, or as much as you can at him now, so that he's more used to it when the bullets are really flying.
Yeah, and if I my memory's not that great, but if I remember right, I feel like during Rex's rookie season at camp, they were coming at him. They were coming at Rex. You guys were throwing a lot at Rex back then, so I don't remember seeing that for Mitch or Justin.
Well, Rex's rookie year, he didn't play.
No, but in
that
camp,
was like an argument. That was a little bit argument between us and the coaching staff, but because we thought Rex was the best quarterback right after we drafted him compared to what we had.
The best in camp for sure.
But it was like the last
three games
or something. Yeah. And in fact, that one game, the first one was at home. And we played like two rookie receivers in Rex, and they all played good games.
Yeah, it was like Justin Gage and Bobby Wade, I think.
Yeah.
They were like 5th and 6th round picks, and it's like, oh man, we got this guy making his first start, and and they both had good games. Justin Gage was the big possession receiver, and Bobby Wade was like a little slot guy who could get it done and return kicks and punts. So.
Well, Haley was our wide receiver coach then, and Haley, in the process leading up to the draft, loved the little, what the hell was his name, the little receiver from Bobby Wade. Loved Bobby Wade. So he'd go by my office in Hallis Hall, and he'd just look in and he'd go, Bobby Wade.
Is this before the draft?
Before the draft. Okay. And then keep on walking.
Keep on going. I love that.
And he would do it every single day for like 2 weeks.
How did he react? Do you remember him reacting? Was he in the draft room with you guys? Or
no, coaches. The only coach that's ever in the draft room is the head coach.
Okay.
Like if you watch like on Hard Knocks, they would bring the defensive coordinator in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's what we do. If we needed a guy to talk to, we'd bring him in, or sometimes it'd be out in the hallway in between. But the coaches were in their offices, and just Lovey was in the draft room.
Oh, yeah. So I did want to, speaking of Hard Knocks, though, I did want to talk about this because you've watched the Giants Hard Knocks, right?
Yeah, and I especially wanted to watch it because I worked there 17 years.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great behind the scenes look. But one of the things
best Hard Knocks I've ever had.
Yeah, by far. I thought so too, and it got me excited to see the Bears one. But one of the things I noticed, I don't know if it was the final episode or the one before, a little combination of both, but when they were talking about trading up, because you could tell the Giants wanted to get up there and get one of those quarterbacks, they had zero interest in even exploring giving up any kind of a haul of picks like the Panthers did last year. And it seemed like no team was interested in that. it seemed the GM Joe Shane, he seemed he scoffed at that idea. They wanted no part of that. Did you
Well,
pick up on that?
if he could steal, he would have made the trade if he could steal him.
Yeah. Well,
Okay, but you know,
I think they said they might
Elliott
throw in
Wolf's
a
been
second
around.
round pick next year or something to go up.
Yeah,
But they weren't even interested in giving up next year's first round pick, let alone multiple first round picks. So,
well, he would have had. I think if it got down to it, he would have gave up next year's. But New England wasn't going to trade that pick.
yeah, unless someone gave up
they
a haul.
got a. Yeah, unless it was like a Bears Carolina type deal. And they don't have to. They're holding the pick. You want it, you better pay for it.
I just thought it was interesting that it seemed they didn't seem interested in giving up a giant haul of picks. And one of the things Bears fans had talked about early on in the process were teams coming up and giving up a giant haul of picks to come up and get Caleb Williams. And even though there were 3 really talented quarterbacks in this class, it didn't seem like any teams were really willing or even talking about doing that from what we've heard from behind the scenes anyway.
Well,
it seemed like that wasn't even an idea.
What I'd say on that is that I think the Bears made it be known we're making the pick.
Yeah.
We're not trading. So
yeah, once Justin Fields was traded, that was pretty much done. Yeah.
Right.
By the time we got to the draft, yeah.
So that I think that kind of shut that down a little bit. I was surprised that actually starting right after New England's pick, that more teams didn't try to get in there to get the quarterback, the other quarterbacks. Minnesota finally moved up 1 spot to get JJ. But, I thought there might be as many as 4 trades in the top 10, maybe even in the top 7. And it was barren, totally barren, which surprised me a little bit.
Does that tell you what that kind of told me is there wasn't much conviction for the quarterbacks outside of the top 3? Because even the Giants, when you saw their process, they wanted a quarterback, they needed a quarterback, but their plan was get one of the top 3 quarterbacks. If we could get Drake May or Jaden Daniels, if not, we get a weapon for Daniel Jones and stick with him. So to me, there was a top 3, and then the top 3 wide receivers. And then maybe even a tackle, or they talked about Brock Bowers too. And then guys like Michael Penix Jr. and J.J. McCarthy, they're a tier or 2 down. The Giants didn't even really seem like they considered those guys. Yeah.
No, I was surprised they had, and not that I don't like the Doomsday, I love them, but I always thought that there was going to be no problem for the Bears to get a Doomsday if that's who they wanted. That, I felt really sure that Atlanta was going to take an edge, not a quarterback. And they ended up taking an edge with their next pick, I think, because they had nobody to rush the passer. So that was the surprise, was Penix going at that pick. But the Giants taking a Doomsday, now they ended up liking him, listening to Hard Knocks. They ended up liking him better than I thought they might. Personally, I had Neighbors as the best receiver in the draft. And the reason being, the things I look at, Harrison is a real good route runner and catches the ball really, really well. Okay, what I did is I did it the way we used to do it when I was with the Bears, and you try to watch guys back to back, just watching catch reels. And where I saw the difference between Neighbors and Harrison was that Neighbors got better separation. Harrison might have been a better pure route runner, but the separation Neighbors got on a consistent basis, and he didn't get separation by 1 or 2 yards. He'd get separation by 4 and 5 yards. And then his run after catch. I think his run after catch was rare, where if you look at Harrison, in my opinion, his run after catch was very, very average. Yeah. In fact, even Rome's run after catch is better than Harrison's. But what I didn't know and found out after the fact is that with some teams, and from what I understand, Chicago is one of them, Neighbors did not interview real well. There was some, I don't know if I like this guy.
That was a question I personally had, and it was something that Without getting to know the players, it was a question mark for me. I thought Marvin Harrison Jr. and Rome Odunze seemed to check all those boxes and made them
Right.
safer picks. The Giants, there was one comment they made. I don't know if you caught this, but I think it was Brian DeBall who said it. He said, choir boys don't usually work out at wide receiver. And I think, to me, I took that kind of as a shot at either Marvin Harrison Jr. or Rome Odunze, or potentially both of them, and that's why he preferred Malik Neighbors. Did you read into anything with that
No, I
comment?
didn't do that. I know they really, because like if the last episode, which was just a couple nights ago,
Mm-hmm.
they even said, "You all right with Odunze?"
Yeah.
So he was he put it, if Neighbors was gone, that would have been their pick, and that would have been the surprise.
Yeah. Well, if they talked about it a little bit, it seemed like at the draft, when it came down to it, if Neighbors went 5, they would have taken Odunze. But when he planned it on the episode before that, they said if Neighbors and Harrison go 4 or 5, they would try to trade down to Chicago at 9, or whoever was at 11, and get either Odunze or Brock Bowers, is what they seem to be the plan. So it's, for some reason, it seemed like they didn't like Odunze as much as Neighbors or Harrison, but he was a fallback plan for them, and that surprised me a bit. To me, Odunze, I had it ranked Marv 1, Odunze 2, and Neighbors 3. But I can't argue with any ranking of those top 3 because they're all 3 special.
It's flavor.
Yeah, to me,
they're all really
that
good.
was kind of it. It was the flavor. To me, we needed a bigger body guy. This was obviously before we traded for Keenan Allen. But I still thought, even after getting Keenan Allen, he's more of a slot guy, even though he is 6'3" and can play as an X receiver. He's made his living working in the slot in the NFL. That's where he does his best work. So to me, we need that big body X type receiver, and that was Rome Odunze or Marvin Harrison. Sure, Neighbors could still fit the offense, but he's a lot. He brings a lot to the table that DJ Moore brings. So to me, as a Bears ranking, I had it Marv, Rome, and then Malik. But I would have been fine if we didn't get Marv or Rome. I kind of would have been like, well, we could trade back and go for one of Brian Thomas Jr., Keon Coleman, or Adonai Mitchell and still get another bigger bodied guy. So that's how I felt with it, but it was more to fit our wide receiver room. And I think Rome fits perfectly. So everything worked out just fine.
Well, if you go back to like that 1920 football drive video they put out right after the draft, if what they're saying is true, and there's no reason to say it wasn't because it's filmed during the actual draft, Rome was their number 2 player.
Yeah, they had Rome as their number 1 receiver and number 2 player. Yeah, so we got at 1 and 9, we got our 2 top players in the entire draft. It's something that we haven't done anything close to that in my lifetime, and it's kind of crazy to think that if it's real, and I believe it is, the way they talked about Rome.
Well, yeah, no, no doubt in my mind, but the point I'm trying to make is that, because I say this 1,000 times, I've said it on my show, no 2 draft boards are alike.
Exactly.
And how they rate their players, and so they rate them according to the way they see them. And even if it's done subconsciously, need comes into play. It always does. You might say it doesn't. No, we're putting it by the best player available. But somehow that need gets worked into there subconsciously, and the guy gets worked up. Now, the interesting thing is, if you go to the episode, not this final episode, so it was episode 4, the Bears made a call to Shane like earlier in the week.
Yep.
Just, really just testing the waters. And you do that. You might call 4 teams, so it doesn't mean they necessarily want to make a trade, but you're just trying to find out, do they have any interest in going down? But what they thought, if you listen to it, they thought, well, I think they want they want an edge, or they want an offensive tackle.
They didn't know we wanted Rome. That's what was good there, because they were willing to trade from 6 to 9 with us, thinking they still had a shot to get Rome Odunze or Brock Bowers at 9. But in all reality, we were coming up to get Odunze, but Joe Shane thought they're coming up to get a tackle. They thought we would be coming up to get J.C. Latham or Joe Alt, whoever the Chargers didn't take, and skip ahead of the Titans to grab them. So that's great play by Ryan Poles there.
You know what? The one thing too that I liked in that show, and I think it was the third episode, might have been the second episode. They were doing the combine interviews,
Mm-hmm.
and they had like the quarterbacks in there,
Mm-hmm.
and so Dayball's talking to him when he's they giving him some plays, and then they go on to another subject. Might be 5 minutes later.
What
Wait,
was
stop.
that play call?
Yeah, stop. Well, write that up.
Write that play call.
I love, because that's what you do. I've sat in the rooms when that's exactly how you do it, because you want to find out about their recall and were they paying attention. And
100%.
why I liked that they showed it is because I've been saying that for years. This is how you do it, but they showed exactly how you do it. So that showed the fans a lot of stuff that goes on that they probably had no idea.
Mm-hmm. And it gave a little behind the scenes look at each of the players. It showed a little bit of Jaden Daniels, a little bit of Drake May, a little bit of Caleb, a little bit of I like the other thing the Giants did, and this was talked about before the draft. A couple people talked about it, and it was on Twitter or whatever. But they brought in Rome Odunze, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Malik Neighbors, all three the same day.
Right.
And they had them all in there. I like that. Let them compete a little bit, bring out see how they all react to the same questions. I like that strategy. But
yeah, no, that was it was really more of a competition thing. Who's going to be the alpha dog within the group?
And like you said, every team's board was different. I really believe the Cardinals had Marvin Harrison Jr. as their number one receiver. The Giants had Malik Neighbors as their number one, and the Bears had Rome Odunze as their number one, meaning all three of us got our number one receivers ranked on the board. And I think all three guys look like they're going to be stars in the NFL. Early on, I think Rome Odunze could be a little behind them simply because he won't get the same amount of targets. He's in an offense that has a lot of mouths to feed, but Rome Odunze's potential and future is just as high as those other guys, if you ask me.
But you know what tells you something? Is that they didn't dress him yesterday.
Mm-hmm. I said that too. I saw people asking. They're like, Odunze is going to play, right? He's not a starter. I was like, he's a starter. They consider three starters. The surprise to me was Velus Jones, but I can see that too. I get it.
No, in fact, when you look at the tight ends, they didn't. 1, 2, and 3 tight ends didn't play.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I didn't expect Mercedes. There was no way I expected Mercedes Lewis to play. So I first Gerald Everett. He's a veteran as well. He has about 7 to 9 years in the NFL. I don't remember off the top of my head, but then Mercedes Lewis he's going on 20 years. So this is a guy who's been in the NFL for a long, long time. He has no need to play a Hall of Fame game. I mean, he might get some preseason reps, but he doesn't even really need many of those.
He won't. If he gets 10, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm. He did dress yesterday, though. I saw people making that story, if you wanted to touch on that, about how Nate Davis wasn't out there stretching, which I thought was ridiculous. Darnell Wright and Tevin Jenkins weren't out there either. They had no reason to dress. The reason why
some of the starters went out there and went through warm-ups.
And the reason I think the reason was, one, they wanted Caleb to get familiar with the process of going out there and warming up.
Right.
And in that process, he has to go out there and take snaps under center. So they had Coleman Shelton and Ryan Bates both dress and warm up with them. But just like Caleb, when the game started, they were back in street clothes. There was no need for Nate Davis to go out. He hasn't even been practicing. So why would he dress up and then go out there?
He missed like 2 or 3 days of practice.
Yep.
It was Marino from Chicago that mentioned that and put, I don't see Nate. And to me, when I saw that, and I put it in our own little private chat thing that you and I are both in, that was just Marino trying to stir up.
Yeah, and I get that. And I don't think there's any, I'm still not happy with where Nate Davis is at. I think he has to get to practice. Like, that's a guy, he has to get to practice. But but there was no reason to make a deal of anything last night. That was just stirring up drama when there was no need for anything. It was expected that Nate Davis wasn't playing. None of the starters played, and he hasn't even practiced, so he wouldn't dress. The other thing, if you wanted to talk about this, what do you think about Khalil Herbert playing last night? People made a big deal about that. I didn't think it was a big deal. A couple reasons. One, our fourth and fifth running back are hurt. So we
Right.
have Ian Wheeler and Travis Homer are both out. And then people are like, well, why is Khalil Herbert our running back 3? He should be our running back 2. And to me, it's not about how good of a running back you are after you're the starter. It's Roschon Johnson offers a better complement of skills to DeAndre Swift.
Exactly.
He's a physical runner and he's a good pass blocker. So naturally, Khalil Herbert's going to be out there a little bit in preseason. He's our
To me, I think he is part of what they were doing with showcasing him.
Mm-hmm.
It would not surprise me if they trade him.
Yep. I see that.
Now the health of these other guys has got to improve. If that doesn't change, like if Travis Homer's got an injury and he can't stick around, and Wheeler I like. So
I like Wheeler.
So if they can't play, then it's a different story. But Herbert might be the best pure runner the Bears got. I haven't seen Swift enough to say he is or he isn't. I know he's a different kind of runner, but his skill set ends right there. He can't catch and he can't block. Or put it this way, when you throw the ball at him, you're praying that he catches it. It's a 50-50. And he can't block. I mean, he's a terrible blocker. So he's got a one-dimensional game, and they want to play guys that can have all three skills to their toolbox, so to speak. And so that puts Roschon and obviously Swift in front of them. And so, again, I look at it and say, okay, what can you get from him? Probably not more than maybe a 6th because he's a running back. But it's a pick you don't have right now. So, why not?
To me, that's where it gets tough because, okay, here's what I see it, okay? Because that's what I think, too. The best you could probably get for him right now is a 6th-round pick. And to me, I'm not giving him away for a 6th-round pick because of this. If DeAndre Swift were to get hurt, I still believe Khalil Herbert would come in and be our starting running back, and Roschon would stay right where he is in the complementary role and come in and on third downs. So, and another factor that DeAndre Swift's never played 16 or 17 games in a full season. He averages about 13 or 14 a year. So Khalil Herbert has more value to me on this roster as a backup than he does as a 6th-round pick. So I think a team would have to step up and offer.
It's a real strong point
in order to trade.
Part of my thinking, in fairness, was he's coming out of contract, and there's no way in hell they're re-signing him.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, so it was like, okay, we're not bringing him back. Maybe we can get something for him. Mm-hmm. So where if you let him go, you're not getting anything.
Yeah.
So because you're not really going to get a comp pick, he's a running back. Yeah. It's very few running backs really, hit a home run in free agency. So that's what my thinking was, but you could very well be right because when you look at his salary is only like $1.2 million. Mm-hmm. It's not like he's costing money to be on the roster.
But you make another point there. I mean, if we could trade him, it does open up another roster spot, like you said, for us to keep another receiver or keep Kari Blasingame on the roster. Because right now you're stuck with those 3 running backs. And if you want another, none of those guys are real special teams players. Roschon can play some special teams, but you're not going to want to risk him too much if he's your RB2. So if you want Ian Wheeler or Travis Homer to make the roster, that becomes a lot easier if you do trade Khalil Herbert. And both of those guys offer more of the third down pass blocking and receiving skills than Herbert does. So maybe they are trying. But it just comes down to, can you get a 5th-round pick out of him? Maybe if he has a big camp, another team's running back goes down, maybe someone offers a little bit more, but I don't think it's worth trading him for a 6th-round pick.
Now, the other part, and you bring it up, that's a little interesting coming into the equation with Travis Homer. Travis Homer has played for Waldron and had production. Yeah.
And actually had production on offense. Yeah, exactly. They used Travis Homer when Waldron was in Seattle. They used third down running backs a lot. It was either Travis Homer or DJ Dallas, but they always had one of those guys that would come in there, and Travis Homer was productive with Waldron. So it's another point. Right. Maybe Homer has a little bit more chance of sticking around, and if that happens, and there's a chance you're going to cut Khalil Herbert anyway, then you might as well just give him away for whatever you can get.
Well,
I think he's too good
I
to cut.
wouldn't
I
cut him.
wouldn't
I'd
cut him.
keep him
Yeah.
before I'd cut him.
I agree. I'm
But
the same way.
if I can get and that's just me talking. If I can get a pick for him, it's not that I don't like him. I just know that he's one-dimensional, and you'd rather have a guy that can do more than one thing.
I think it's a statement of our coaching staff and the players they bring in. We talked about it a little bit that they're doing it at safety. They want their safeties to be interchangeable. They want their defensive tackles to be interchangeable. They want their guards to be able to do that as well. They want their running back to not tip the defense off to what they're going to do. When Khalil Herbert comes in the game, you almost expect the team to run because he's not a great pass blocker and not a good receiver. Obviously, they're not going to run every time Khalil Herbert's out there, but anytime you give the defense just a little bit of a heads up of what you might be doing, that's something this coaching staff doesn't want to do, and I see that as a positive. And Herbert won't be here long term, but I do still think he has some value.
You know, it was interesting, and I haven't studied the offensive line from last night that much yet, but the one guy who played a lot at center was Carvin.
Yeah.
And played pretty well. Murray, who flew twice now, was brought up and after practice pressers, played pretty good. And so I made it a point to watch him, and I wrote about him yesterday morning in a pregame article in Windy City Gridiron. And the only reason I wrote about it is because Flus had brought him up.
Mm-hmm.
And he's extremely athletic. I went back and looked at his. Now, he's been in the league like 4 years or something already, or 5 years.
Yeah.
But mostly a practice squad player. But he was a defensive tackle in college. This is only his second year playing guard,
mm-hmm.
or maybe his third season. But he was like a 4'9" guy, a 34-inch vertical, numbers that you just don't see from offensive linemen. So then watching him yesterday, I thought Tyree Carter might have been the most athletic offensive lineman they had until I saw this guy yesterday. This guy's really athletic.
I thought it was close. I thought so when I watched those guys, when I watched the condensed game back, that was one of the things I wanted to watch was Tyree Carter and Bill Murray. Because in the first team offensive line yesterday, it was Larry Borum, Tyree Carter was at left guard, Carvin was at center, and then you had Matt Pryor at right guard and Jake Curran at right tackle. But when the second team came out, Carter was still at left guard and Bill Murray was at right guard. And to me, Carter was out there dominating people. I saw him putting people on their back. I saw him playing well in pass protection. And Bill Murray, I did see the athleticism, but he also looked a bit wild and a bit kind of untamed, like he was just kind of out there just trying to just get his hands on someone, but not exactly knowing what he was doing.
The defensive lineman still in. I'll tell you, that's interesting to me too is Pryor lined up at guard and left tackle.
Well, right tackle, right? This is what I saw when I was
the second when they took out Borum. Pryor went to left tackle.
That was Aviante Collins was at left tackle. Pryor was at right tackle. I was charting it this morning.
Okay,
yeah, it was Aviante Collins. And then the interesting thing that I think most people probably missed because it was only for the final 2 drives before the game got suspended, but this was the final offensive line. And this was interesting to me. Tyree Carter was our left tackle. Jerome Carvin moved over from center to left guard. Doug Kramer was at center. Bill Murray was at right guard. And then Jake Curran came back in the game at right tackle. But seeing Tyree Carter get those left tackle snaps over Matt Pryor, to me, was extremely interesting. Now, I would have wanted to see it continue. It was obviously you had that. The first drive was, I think, a touchdown drive. It was the last drive that Rippon was in the game. I think it was the second touchdown pass to Colin Johnson. That had Tyree Carter at left tackle and Doug Kramer at center. And both of those guys looked good. But then the next drive, it was that Austin Reed 3-and-out. There was a penalty, and then they threw 2 screen passes, basically, and that was it. But Carter at left tackle, do you have any thoughts on it? Because we know We know he's athletic, but do you have any thoughts on
Well,
that?
my thought is that he was a left tackle for his whole career at Southern. He was a left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
It's because he measured 6'3.5", 6'3 3/4", something like that. When he came out, that they said, okay, you're too short to play tackle. You're going to play guard, but he's got long arms.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get out. Charles Leno was not even 6'4". Charles Leno was 6'0", 3'7". Played like 10 years at left tackle.
He did. Made some money too.
Yep.
Made some money.
I just heard some, I thought he might still want to get into a camp. It might be a late pickup because he didn't play badly last year. I just heard the other day, no, he's done. He's going into media.
Oh, he's going into media. Okay.
I don't know who he's going to be. I saw it, but I can't remember who is he going to be working for. But he is going to be doing some analytical work.
Oh, okay. That's wild. I did have 2 questions from people that I asked people if they had any questions for you. Doug Van Dorn asked if you think Colin Johnson has moved past Dante Pettis in the competition for one of those last wide receiver spots.
Yeah, only because Pettis kind of shot himself in the foot with that muff punt.
And he also missed a reception too that I think he could have ended up coming down with. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, that was true. And in fairness, Johnson missed one too. The first ball thrown to him,
he made up.
He missed 2. Yeah, more than made up for it. But Pettis disappointed me. He was hurt last year. He got hurt in camp. They did an injury settlement with him, but they thought enough of him to bring him back. But still, in a situation like that where, okay, he was a, fair return man, punt return man when he was here 2 years ago, he had to continue with that. And then he muffs the only opportunity he gets. I think that just killed him.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think his situation, it was pretty dire with as far as making the roster anyway. Once we signed DeAndre Carter, I think Pettis' only job, he was brought back here basically as a fail-safe if they couldn't solve the punt returner job. He was because we don't have Trent Taylor around anymore. Velus Jones can't do it. I don't trust Tyler Scott. So it's like, well, unless we want to put Romo Dunze back there, we kind of have to have a punt returner on the roster. And DeAndre Carter's that guy. I think he's clearly that guy. He's gonna, as long as he stays healthy, knock on wood. But with that, I think Dante Pettis is pretty much done because he can't contribute on offense. He can get open. He has talent. He has speed. He can run routes. He has his hands are just insanely questionable. I wouldn't trust throwing him the ball if I was a quarterback.
Speaking of special teams, the kickoff, because I got my, I'm very used to this type of kickoff. We used it in the XFL when I was there. So, but there was 2 kicks the Bears returned that could have been touchbacks.
Yep.
Okay. One, Scott returned it. And he caught it more a yard to a yard and a half deep in the end zone. The other one, he had 1 foot on the goal line, the other foot on the playing field. It would have landed in the end zone. The ball would have gone to the 30.
Yeah.
My personal feeling is
they
did that purposely.
Yeah.
Because you want to see what the guys up front can do. And the only way you can do that is to play out.
They haven't seen this kickoff yet. So, I mean, they said it. Richard Hightower's talked about it, and Flus has too. They're still trying to figure it out and want to see what it even looks like and get some reps on tape. So I think the returners were directed to bring it out no matter what. Now, if it was a regular season game and it actually mattered,
no, that ball was going to the 30-yard line.
You're going to take it at the 30, yeah. But as far as last night, they were just trying to get some reps on tape. I think the returners were told, just like you said, they were directed, bring it out no matter what. It's a Hall of Fame game. We want to get some reps on tape. So, yeah, I didn't care about that.
Now, if it was 5 yards deep, that's a different story. But it was borderline like that, hey, because you don't care. You're not, it's practice. So you're not going to downgrade Scott for bringing it out because he was probably told to bring it out to begin with.
Now I will downgrade him because I didn't like the way he looked on kick returns. He took big hits on both of those returns, and I was like, you know what? I don't know if Scott's the guy as far as the kick returner. I'd rather keep him as our wide receiver 4, bring out someone like Valus or Ian Wheeler, a bigger bodied, kind of a more compact runner, instead of Tyler Scott, who's kind of thin framed. I didn't like that.
Now, he didn't play, unless I'm mistaken, I don't think he played much at wide receiver. He might have only got a few snaps.
He started the game, but I think he left when Bagent did, like after the first.
So that was like 6 plays.
Yeah.
But I know he didn't get, I don't think, he maybe got 1 target, but he didn't.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't play anywhere near as much some of those other guys did.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so since we're talking about Bagent, I feel like Bagent is locked in as our quarterback too. I think last night further cemented that, while other people were talking about a quarterback battle. I think them taking Bagent out of the game, Ryan Poles loves Tyson Bagent. He came in and proved he could operate this offense as an undrafted Division II rookie last year. Now he's got Shane Waldron and a lot more weapons on off. I think he's our QB2. I think Brett Rippon,
I agree with you,
battling for QB3 with Austin Reed, which he may have jumped ahead in that battle, but he's not challenging Bagent for that QB2 job.
No, but Rippon played good. But you know what? He's been in the league 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
He should be able to do that.
Yeah,
in a preseason
guys
game.
Who aren't going to be in the NFL most likely.
Right. But it's now the only negative. Well, there's 2 negatives I have on Rippon. Neither one is well, semi-bad. I think he's got very average arm talent. He's not going to be able to drive the ball, but he's accurate and he spins the ball well. And the other thing is he can't make plays with his feet. So if you want somebody like 1 and 2, you aren't getting it from him. He's a 4.85 guy who, if you've got a wide open hole, he'll get a couple yards, but he's not going to extend a play or elude the rush. But he's a smart kid. He was a good player when he was at Boise. When I did read on junior tape, I did them for some agents I worked for going into the season. The 23 season. I liked him off of that 22 season tape. I didn't do any follow-up because they didn't ask me to. So how he actually played during the season, I don't know, but he ended up, I thought he was a draftable guy off a 22 tape. He never got drafted. So, obviously he probably didn't play quite as well as I thought he might. He does have some talent. He's got athleticism. He's another 6'1" guy. To me, he's a practice squad guy, but if you're going to have 3 on the 53, do you even keep a practice squad guy?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, I think if we do the 3 on the 53, we probably don't. I think it's probably more likely a guy like Brett Rippon or Austin Reed can be stashed on the practice squad because they made it a little bit easier now to bring those guys up for game day now. So you at least have a third quarterback.
You can cut Rippon and nobody's going to pick him up.
Yeah, exactly. I feel the same way. If we cut Rippon, no one's going to sign him. We could easily bring him back on the practice squad. And
like Peterman, it's like Peterman last year. Mm-hmm. You can cut him every day of the week, and you're not going to claim him.
Well, I mean, and on top of that, yeah, those guys, I think at that point they have veteran status and don't even go to waivers. They can choose where they go. So if you've already told them beforehand you're going to re-sign them, they're coming back here anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
Yep. And then
sometimes you got to pay them more for their practice squad salary, but the practice squad salary are just guidelines. That's the minimum. You can give a guy a veteran minimum if you want to. You don't have. You can pay him a lot more than the practice squad salary.
Yeah, I think the Browns were doing that at one point for Joe Flacco before they ended up bringing him back on the roster, but they were paying him a lot more. Yeah. And then final question, my boy Walt asks, do you have any thoughts on the offensive line? Did anybody stand out to you, good or bad, overall?
I thought I wasn't real happy with the first drive, but then, they shot themselves in the foot, and that really was, a legal procedure that was a tight end. It wasn't one of the offensive linemen. That was, So, no, overall, the protection was pretty good. The run blocking was good. These guys are, they're not starters. Not bad. So you want to see what the big dogs can do. Tell you what was a little interesting to me, because people still like to give Braxton Jones some shit.
Mm-hmm.
And they were, the announcers were doing a thing with their offense, and they highlighting the players. They highlighted Wright, Jones, Caleb, the 4 receivers, and Swift. So they had to get it somewhere. It's not like they're just sitting there putting that stuff down because they don't know the teams.
Yeah,
and
exactly. Yeah.
And the 2 offensive linemen they highlighted were the 2 tackles.
Yeah. I'm high on both of those guys. I think people sleep on Braxton Jones. I think this is a big year for him, and I think if he plays up to potential, they're not going to be talking about him the same next year.
No, he's a talented guy. You go out to scout to find guys like Braxton Jones. He's one of the better athletes at left tackle in the league.
And people get way too hung up on where he went to school and where he was drafted, but if he can fix his anchor, and so far from what I've seen just in camp and stuff and one-on-ones with DeMarcus Walker, his anchor and his base looks a lot stronger this year. And I'm hoping
it was better last year.
Yeah, he got better last year.
You look at last year compared to the year before, it was a lot better. So no, I'm not worried about that. He works with Olin. So during the off season, before the Bears off season program starts, and Olin knows what he needs, and going to help him get there. And you know what? The kid's a very conscientious, well-spoken kid. For whatever reason, he's a late bloomer, whatever. He ends up at Southern Utah. I've been to Southern Utah. One of it might be in the bottom 5 of the FCS schools in the country, program-wise.
Yeah.
You can look at Amagaji, and everybody, that's a name we forget. Is he done for like the year? Because he hasn't even practiced yet, and that. Because if he all of a sudden suits up and starts practicing within the next week or something, he's a 3rd-round pick. He isn't going anywhere.
Yeah. If he goes IR or something, it does open up another roster spot for one of these other guys to make the team.
Right.
But yeah, I would like to see him practice. But right now, it's hard. It's looking like it's not going to happen, and he's going to the PUP or the IR.
Well, he's on PUP now. You can keep him on PUP through the preseason, and then if he's on PUP, then once the season starts, then I figure out if he's got to sit 4 weeks or 6 weeks.
6 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, and then you open up a window where he can practice.
Mm-hmm. So
but
we could see that. But
you want to find out. There's some. Here's what my theory behind all this is. And I like Tevin, and I might have brought this up when we did the show 2 weeks ago. I do not think Tevin Jenkins is a lock to be here a year from now. He's coming out of contract. They just gave DJ a big extension. Tevin went in and looked for an extension. They said, we'll talk to you after bye week. And then they spent all the money on DJ. So that contract still hasn't come in yet to see what's left on the cap. How it's structured.
Mm-hmm.
But right now they probably only got about $8 million, $9 million, and that's what you need, about 6 to 7 to run the team.
Yeah.
During the year, and there's other deals you can do. Sweat. Tremaine Edmonds, some of those other people, you can restructure those deals and take their salary and move their salary into signing bonus, and that all it is an accounting move. You're not really changing the contract, just how they're getting paid. They're getting paid the whole year right today instead of getting get a paycheck every game. So they can create space. But when you look at the money, like the kid from Denver gets $20 million a year. Couple guys in free agency got real big money at the guard position.
Couple guards got $100 million. Never seen that before. Yeah.
I cannot see Ryan Poles giving number one, he didn't draft him. And number 2, he hasn't played a full season yet. Missed games I haven't looked at the numbers, but I think he's missed almost a full season in his 3 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, to me, that says, and I think that's one of the reasons why they drafted a lineman, that they drafted his replacement, and that one of those high picks is going to be a lineman next year too.
Yeah, it's very
That's
possible.
my own gut feeling.
Yeah,
That's my own gut feeling. Not that I don't like the player. I'm just, guys that he didn't draft are gone. Roquan is the perfect example. He's going to go with the guys he brought to the dance.
Yeah, he's kept just Cole Kmet and Jalen Johnson. So if he did keep Tev, it'd be only the 3rd player around. And that's the last of them. Everybody else is already gone. I do hope that Tev can put it all together and work out a team-friendly extension, especially if Nate Davis isn't really working out. We can cut him and save roughly $10 million next year.
You can't cut him this year, though. That's the problem.
Next year, yeah. Well,
Right.
So I looked into it. We can cut him this year, and we don't get he's basically on the hook for $12.75 million no matter what. Now, if we keep him,
you're going to get 6 of it's going to be this year.
Yeah, we're paying him $11.75 million if we keep him. If we cut him, we're paying him $10.75 million, and then have a $2 million dead cap hit next year. So we save only $600,000 on cap space. So it's basically you're paying him the same amount whether you keep him or cut him this year. So you want to keep him on the roster and hope he breaks out or bounces back. If he doesn't, though, he's gone next year, and he saves us $9.5 million that we can potentially then use to help keep Tevin Jenkins around. It's my hope.
True, but here's what I just argumentative in this thing. You get through the season,
mm-hmm.
and they don't have and Tev doesn't have a deal. His agent's going to say, "Go to free agency."
Yeah,
especially if he plays good.
And I think Poles knows that.
Now, if he gets, if he misses 3, 4, 5 games like he has every other year, then it's like, okay, we'll give you $10 million. Might be a doable deal, but I just can't see him wanting to pay a guy that can't line up and play every week.
My hope is that if we approach him after the bye week, if he can start out the season strong, stay healthy throughout camp and through those first 6 games, that's a good third of the season. Now, obviously, at that point, he hasn't proved that he can stay healthy for a full year. So at that point, you're not going to be giving him the $20 million or the $18 million that some of those guards got, or what he could potentially get overpaid for in free agency. But if you can get him in some kind of a deal for between 13 and 15 million a year, maybe even 12, I think Tev might want to take that to get the deal done early, avoid free agency, and stay in Chicago, where I think he likes it. You never know what a guy really likes, but if Poles can get that done, I'd be all for it, but it's tough.
Totally valid point. I just go back to the durability thing. That's all. Mm-hmm. That my main concern is not what he does when he plays.
Mm-hmm.
It's that he doesn't play enough.
Yeah, that's the biggest issue.
And you're not. I just cannot see Ryan. And Ryan is real big on the analytics of injuries. And when guys get injured, they keep getting injured. So he's got to prove he can stay healthy.
That's a thought. Let me ask you this question when it comes down to it, and it's just about the money there. If you're re-signing a guy and Tevin Jenkins, let's say he plays about like he did last year. He misses 5 to 6 games, but when he's healthy, he's one of our better offensive linemen. But Keenan Allen plays 15 games and has 1,200 yards. Would you rather put that money into bringing Keenan Allen back for another 2 years with Caleb Williams and then drafting a guard or tackle with one of those 3 picks we have early and replacing Tev?
It's a good question. It's funny because I think about what DJ said. After DJ said, well, I know what his number is because I asked him. Mm-hmm. And he's trying to play like middleman to get a deal done. And and I understand what he wants to keep guys, the good players around him, and he obviously has a good relationship with Keenan, but he's 32 this year, so he's 33 next year. I think really it depends on what's he do this year and how much receivers, if they haven't had real bad injuries. If you get soft tissue injuries, it's not a bad deal. I mean, if it's like ACL or something like that, you could look at Tariq Cohen, different position as running back, but he tore an ACL and Achilles back to back, and he just retires yesterday because of it, because you just don't have the explosiveness anymore. Well, best of my knowledge, Keenan has not had those. He's had injuries and he's missed games, but he hasn't had those really debilitating type injuries. And he takes good care of himself. You watch him, the guy really moves around well. So, can he play another? So he played with, say, he's 35. It's not out of the question, but at what price?
It comes down to the price. You're not going to pay him the DJ Moore price because he's not in his prime like DJ is, but he is still productive. He is probably still worth at least $20 million a year. So that's a tough question. What is his number?
I wouldn't pay him 20.
I wish DJ would tell us what his number was, but I'd love to see it on
He isn't going to do that.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't pay. Now, 15, I might think about it. I wouldn't want to pay him 20. And actually, if you paid him 15, he's taking a pay cut.
Yeah, true. That's where I think he probably wouldn't do it. He probably wants at least 20, which is what DJ was getting before.
But in all fairness, Swifty, everybody in the league's thinking the same thing. Next year, he's a 33-year-old receiver. How much money am I going to pay a 33-year-old receiver?
And if you're Keenan, he might want to stay in this offense where he'd only played with one team his whole career. He didn't want to leave.
Right.
And now he's on a second team, and you're with DJ Moore, who he seems to be already building a lot of chemistry and a friendship with, and Caleb Williams, a guy who he seems to also be building chemistry with. And part of such a dangerous offense, wouldn't you want to stick it out for a couple years and maybe have a shot at going to the first Super Bowl of your career? Maybe, just maybe, he would take a little bit less money for a chance like that. And that's something we usually don't offer teams. Again,
it's a real valid point. I'll tell you, just watching some of the side things of them, I ended up putting the camera on him a few times. And I don't think it was specifically meant to put the camera on him, but they were showing the sideline. And when the receivers were making plays, he was that ended up being in the shot, and he's the guy that's real excited.
Oh, he was. Yeah, I'd love to see it too.
And that to me shows good teammate.
Yeah, 100%. And he looks like a guy. I think he's, for all intents and purposes, everything I've heard from Keenan, he's been a good teammate his whole career, and he clearly helped Justin Herbert out there for his first few years in the NFL and helped him transition and be productive. So can only be a good thing for Caleb Williams, if you ask me.
Yeah, no question. You look at the numbers, Justin Herbert threw for 4,200 yards as a rookie.
We just dream of stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, I've said this before. I don't know if I've said it with you, but a coach I know really well said the hardest place in the league to throw for 4,000 yards is this stadium, because you don't ever know what the weather's going to be, and there's going to be games you just can't throw the ball. Now, when they get the dome, different story. Then they'll be putting numbers up the yin-yang. But he goes, at Soldier Field, he goes, that and Cleveland are the two hardest places to play in the league, in his opinion. Even worse than Buffalo, because Cleveland and Chicago sit right on the lake, where Buffalo's a good 6-7 miles from the lake.
Yeah, that wind coming off the lake is rough.
Right.
Yeah, 100%. No, those are probably, I think that's pretty much universal, that those are the two hardest places to throw the ball, at least.
He told me that he came in here as an offensive coordinator for another team, and they had to change their game plan the morning of the game because of the conditions inside Soldier Field.
I think I've heard you actually say that on Aldo's show before about how they had to do that because they couldn't pass the ball. The wind was just too strong, even in practice.
So it's that factor that can be the limiting factor in Caleb throwing for 4,000 yards through no fault of his own, strictly weather conditions.
Yeah, 100%. And I still think he's going to get it done, but I don't like to put all that expectations on him as a rookie. If he does it, he does it. If not, I'm going to enjoy the ride either way.
I just want him to win.
Yeah, that's what we want. And he's in a
If
position.
he throws for 3,200 yards and they win, who cares?
I'll be happy. I'll be happy.
Yeah, darn right.
I think that's about all I got for you today, Greg. And I know we're over an hour. So did you have anything else or anything else?
No, we're good. In fact, we're getting close to an hour and a half, but that's fine.
So we're going to cut out of here. Greg, as always, man, appreciate having you on. Thank you so much for coming, and bear down.
Okay, we'll see you in 2 weeks.